Space was quiet. It's too quiet. In the endless black, a lone human scout ship drifted between the stars. Its engines were hot, glowing faint blue against the void. Behind it, like wolves chasing a wounded prey, came an alien fleet 23 warships. Of mixed design, their hulls jagged with weapons and scars from old battles. They were closing in, cutting off escape. Inside the scout ship, alarms wailed. Lights flashed red in the narrow corridors. The small crew worked fast, their voices tense. They knew the fleet behind them was not here for negotiations. The aliens were hunters, and today, humanity was the prey. On the lead alien ship, Captain Varric leaned forward in his command seat. His eyes were cold, his voice calm. "Bring them in. Engines only. No killing shots yet. I want to see if the rumors are true, the rumors." Every commander in this sector had heard them. Strange whispers about humans, how they had grown too fast, how they were hiding something big, something dangerous. But no one had ever seen proof. Humans were still young in the galactic stage, with only a small navy. Easy to control. Easy to pressure. That was the story. Until now, the human scout ship made a sudden move, cutting its engines completely. It began to drift. The alien sensors flickered in confusion. No hyperdrive activation, no warp signature, just silence. Signaled their captain, Varric ordered. "Tell them we will offer terms." But before the message could be sent, the human ship did something strange. It transmitted a single, short pulse on an ancient emergency frequency. One so old most fleets didn't even monitor it anymore. In the empty black ahead of the scout ship, stars seemed to blur. At first, it looked like a trick of the eyes' shadow passing across the stars. But then the shadow grew, was moving toward them, its edges sharp, its form massive. Piece by piece, its outline became clear metal plating, armor ridges, enormous weapon batteries. Gasps and curses filled the alien bridges. The ship was impossibly larger than any carrier ever recorded. Its length stretched for kilometers, its hull bristling with launch bays and glowing ports. It moved with the calm confidence of something that feared nothing, and painted along its side, in stark white letters, were the words, "United Human Supercarrier Violanti." The alien fleet's formation faltered. Weapons officers hesitated, unsure if they should lock targets. Even Varric leaned back in his seat, his jaw tightening. This was no rumor. This was something built in secret, far beyond the known limits of human industry. A voice cut through the comes clear, steady, and human. "This is Terran Command. You've crossed into restricted space. You will turn back immediately." It was not a threat. It was not shouted. It was simply stated, like a fact. The alien crews scanned the massive ship, desperate for weaknesses, but the scans kept failing. Every time their sensors reached for more data, they were blocked. It was as if the supercarrier wasn't just resisting, it was scanning them. The alien captains began to argue. It's too big to be real. It can't be fully armed. They're bluffing. But Varric noticed something no one else. Seemed to see small silent movements along the carrier's hull. Hangar doors were opening. Shapes were emerging. Dozens of sleek black craft slipped into the void, each the size of a gunship, but shaped like nothing in any known navy. They didn't send coms. They didn't flash running lights. They simply fanned out in perfect formation, surrounding the alien fleet like circling predators. Varric's weapons officer whispered, "Sir, we're being locked from all sides." Yet the humans didn't fire. They just watched. In the silence, the alien crews began to feel something. Unfamiliar doubt. It was not the fear of being attacked, but the heavier weight of realizing the other side had already won. The human voice returned, calm as before. "Final warning. Leave now." For the first time, Varric felt his control slipping. Every instinct told him to fight, to prove the aliens still ruled this sector. But another part of him, the part that survived, wars knew the truth. This was not a normal battle. This was a message. And the message was clear. Humanity was no longer a small player in the galaxy. The massive carrier stayed still, its weapons silent, its fighters unmoving. But every captain there knew they were one order away from destruction. Gave the command, "Withdraw. All ships." Now engines flared. The alien fleet began to pull back, formation broken. None of them looked away from the carrier until they were far beyond its shadow. In the scout ship, the crew let out the breath. They'd been holding. The carrier didn't follow. It simply turned, its colossal bulk vanishing back into the starfield as silently as it had appeared. And in that moment, the galaxy changed. Not because a shot had been fired, not because a battle had been won, but because every captain who had seen that ship would never forget it, and they would tell everyone they knew. Somewhere, far from any charted world, humanity had built a weapon the galaxy had never imagined. And they had just shown it to the universe. The alien fleet moved away in silence. Their engines burned bright, but their comm channels stayed dead. Not a single ship dared to speak openly until the massive human carrier was no longer visible in their rear sensors. On the bridge of the flagship, Captain Verak sat still, staring at the empty space where the Valiant had been moments before. His crew avoided looking at him. They were all thinking the same thing. How had humans built something like that without anyone knowing? The galaxy was a place where every power watched the others closely. New weapons, new ships, even new mining outposts were tracked and logged by rival intelligence networks. Yet somehow, this monster had been born in complete secrecy. Verak opened a private channel to his senior officers. "Speak freely. What did we just see?" One of his tactical officers, a young and nervous reptilian named Ser, answered first. "Sir, I think it was a bluff. The ship was big, yes, but maybe not fully functional. They might be using a few advanced systems to scare us away." The veteran weapons master shook his head. "No, that was no bluff. Did you see the drones? They moved like they knew exactly where our weaknesses were. Our shields, our weapons, even our engines they had. Every system locked." "That takes more than luck." Another voice cut in. "It was scanning us, Captain. Not just the ships." I felt my implants heating up. The thing could probably shut down every life support system we have without firing a shot. The officers began arguing, each theory darker than the last. Rock let them speak. He wanted their fear to settle in, because fear was honest. Fear didn't exaggerate, revealed what the mind truly believed. And right now, every mind in that room believed the same thing. Humanity had just stepped onto the galactic stage as a power no one could afford to ignore. Far from the alien fleet, in the political hubs of the Orion sector, the first fragments of news began to spread. Traders, smugglers, and pirate captains talked in hushed voices about a shadow ship that could blot out the stars. Some claimed it was a mobile space station. Others swore it was an ancient relic from a dead race, stolen by humans. The story grew with each telling, but one fact never changed. The humans had it, and it was real. Verak knew how rumors worked. Within days, the great empires would hear of this. Councils would meet, intelligence agencies would dig through years of records trying to find any hint of how such a ship was built. And when they found nothing, fear would turn to suspicion. Suspicion would turn to plans. Captain Ser said cautiously, "If humans have one of these, they might have more." That thought chilled the room. It was impossible, of course. No single species could build more than one ship of that size without anyone noticing. The resources alone would be astronomical, entire asteroid belts stripped bare, shipyards working in secret for decades. And yet, as Verak considered it, he realized something that made his stomach tighten. If they built one without being caught, what else had they been building? Meanwhile, in a quiet sector, far from any populated system, the Supercarrier Valiant floated in silence. From the outside, it was still and lifeless, but inside, its vast corridors were alive with motion. Thousands of crew members moved between stations. Engineers checked the fighter bays. Technicians monitored the ship's sensors, tracking the alien fleet as it retreated. In the command center, Admiral Reeves stood before the massive viewport, watching the fading dots on the tactical display. He did not smile. Message sent. He asked. Yes, Admiral, replied a communications officer. Every channel, every frequency they use. They'll be talking about it before they reach their own borders. Reeve nodded slowly. This had not been a battle. It had been a warning, carefully timed, carefully staged. A first glimpse of what humanity had been hiding. The Valiant was more than a warship. It was a symbol. And symbols had power that no number of guns could match. He turned to his officers. Maintain full readiness. They'll be back. Next time, it may not end without blood. In the black beyond the carrier's hull, the drones returned silently. Gliding into their hangars, their work was done for now. The galaxy was changing, and the crew of the Valiant knew this was only the beginning. Far away, alien councils would soon gather. Secret meetings would be held. Old alliances would be tested. And somewhere, in the shadowed corners of the galaxy, someone was already asking the question no one wanted to answer if humans built the Valiant. What are they building next? Long before the Valiant's shadow fell across alien fleets, humanity faced a darkness of its own making. It began quietly in the forgotten corners of space, where strange signals whispered across deep space channels, patterns no one could explain, carrying codes no one could break. At first, Earth scientists thought it was random noise. Then, ships began to vanish. The disappearances were never reported in the official news. Cargo freighters, deep space miners, even military patrols, gone without a trace. The few survivors who escaped spoke of an enemy that came without warning, struck without hesitation, and left nothing behind but drifting wreckage. Humanity never learned their name. Were not like the alien diplomats humanity had met before. They made no demands, offered no terms, and answered no signals. They came only to destroy. For the first time in centuries, humanity understood. True fear, old rivalries between nations faded almost overnight. Borders became meaningless lines on old maps. Earth's governments united under a single council, and in a secure chamber deep beneath the surface of the moon, a plan was born. They called it Project Titan. Its goal was simple to say, impossible. To imagine build a warship so vast, so powerful, it could survive alone against anything the galaxy could throw at it. It would carry enough firepower to challenge entire fleets, enough armor to endure planetary bombardment, and enough resources to operate without supply for years. It would be a city, a fortress, and a fleet all in one. But secrecy was everything. The Council knew the project could not be built in open space. Too many alien eyes watched the shipyards orbiting Earth and Mars, so humanity vanished from the galaxy's attention. Pulling its most skilled engineers, scientists, and soldiers into places where no one would look, they found their perfect hiding place inside a dense, unstable nebula near the galactic rim. Sensors could barely see through it, and its swirling storms of ionized gas blinded long-range scans. There, hidden in the glow of purple and gold clouds, construction began. It took 30 years. Entire asteroid fields were stripped of metal. Fleets of cargo haulers moved materials under false registrations, pretending to be on civilian trade routes. Generations of workers lived and died inside the hidden shipyards, their only purpose to bring the Valiant into existence. And it was not just human hands at work. Humanity had made quiet deals with fringe alien species outcasts, smugglers and independent traders willing to trade technology for safety. In exchange for secrecy, they received weapons designs, stealth systems, and experimental shielding methods that no single empire would dare share openly. Piece by piece, the Valiant grew. By the time it was complete, the war that had started Project Titan was long over. The enemy who had nearly ended humanity had vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. Some believed they had been driven away by unknown forces. Others feared they had simply gone elsewhere, waiting for the right moment to return. The Council faced a choice: decommission the Valiant, or keep it as the ultimate safeguard. The decision was unanimous. Humanity had built a weapon for survival, but survival was a war that never truly ended. The Valiant would not be scrapped, would remain hidden, a silent guardian. And so, for years, the ship slept. Its massive reactors stayed cold, Its hangars stayed empty. Crews rotated in and out, training in secret, learning systems that few outside the program even believed were real. Generations of officers passed the knowledge down like a guarded flame. Until now. The galaxy had seen it just for a moment. Long enough for fear to spread, long enough for old alliances to shift. The Council knew what would come next. They had shown the Valiant not as a threat, but as a promise. A message to every empire, every warlord, and every forgotten enemy still. Lurking in the shadows, humanity would never be caught unprepared again. The alien council chambers were never meant for shouting, but now the walls shook with it. Representatives from dozens of star systems spoke over each other, arguing, accusing, predicting disaster. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing the same grainy recordings from the border incident. Frames of the Valiant's massive silhouette blotting out the stars. No one agreed on what should be done. Some demanded a united strike before the humans could grow stronger. Others urged caution, warning that an attack could trigger a war that no one could win. And in the shadows of the council floor, agents were already making secret plans of their own. While alien leaders argued, the Valiant was already moving. It slid through deep space like a silent storm, its engines barely whispering against the void. Inside the command deck, Admiral Reeves stood at the center platform, his eyes locked on a glowing tactical display. Small red icons moved across the map pirate fleets, slavers, and hostile patrols. The galaxy was full of predators, and right now, one of them was about to make a mistake. A distress call had reached them only hours ago. A human colony transport was under attack on the edge of unclaimed space, too far from regular defense patrols. The attackers were a mixed band of scavenger warlords' fast ships, lightly armed but ruthless. By the time help arrived, the transport would be gone. Reeve didn't bother sending help. He sent the Valiant. The Supercarrier emerged from warp. Without warning, its hull glowing faintly from the strain of the jump. The pirate fleet scattered instantly. They had expected a slow convoy escort, maybe a handful of corvettes. Instead, they faced a warship that looked like it could crush. Moon. The Valiant didn't open fire. Didn't need to. Hundreds of drone bays came alive at once, releasing swarms of black, needle-shaped craft into space. They moved faster than the pirates could track, slipping between ships and cutting engines with surgical precision. One by one, the attackers went dark, drifting powerless in the shadow of the carrier. On the transport ship, terrified colonists pressed against their viewports, watching the silent ballet unfold. No explosions, no chaos, just sudden stillness, as if an invisible hand had frozen the battle in place. Moments later, a single transmission cut across every channel. This is the Valiant. You will stand down, you will surrender, or you will be removed. The pirates surrendered. All of them. Boarding teams swept in, efficient and cold, stripping weapons and disabling systems. No one was killed. No one even fired a shot. The battle had lasted less than 4 minutes. When the colonists were safe, the Valiant didn't linger. It simply turned and vanished into the dark, leaving the wrecked pirate fleet to be collected by local authorities. To the colonists, it was a miracle. To the pirates, it was a warning. To the watching galaxy, it was something far more dangerous. Was proof that the Valiant wasn't just a myth. Proof that it could move anywhere, strike anyone, and disappear before reinforcements could arrive. Proof that humanity's shadow now reached further than anyone had guessed. Back on the command deck, Admiral Reeve gave a single order before stepping away from the tactical display: make sure this story reaches every corner of the galaxy. The communications officer didn't ask why. Everyone on the Valiant understood the more the galaxy feared them, the less they would need to fight. But in the deepest parts of the nebula, where the Valiant had been born, hidden listening posts picked up something strange. A faint signal, pattern in the noise. It's the same pattern that had been heard decades ago, before the first enemy came, and this time was stronger. Deep inside the swirling storms of the Helios Nebula, a lonely listening station drifted among rocks and glowing clouds. It was one of the first to be built during Project Titan, tasked with monitoring the dark edges of space for signs of trouble. For years, it heard only static and faint whispers of distant traffic. But now, something new pulsed through its receivers, a rhythm, ancient and cold. It was the same pattern humanity had heard decades ago, before the unknown enemy arrived. Back then, it had been faint, like a shadow moving far away. Now it was sharp, clear, and repeating faster. Whoever or whatever was out there, they were closer than ever. On the Valiant. Admiral Reeves stood in the war room, surrounded by a circle of high-ranking officers. The signal played over the speakers, a low, pulsing tone that seemed to cut through the air like a blade. None of them spoke for several seconds. Everyone knew what it meant. The threat they had built the Valiant. Two-Face had returned. The question was, were they ready? Reeve ordered a full-spectrum scan across the border regions. Drones spread out in all directions, slipping into hyperspace to hunt for any sign of the approaching force. The Valiant's internal systems shifted into full readiness. Reactors warmed. Defense grids armed, fighter squadrons moved to standby. The ship's city-sized hangars filled with the low roar of engines, but the galaxy had changed since the last time the enemy appeared. Humans were no longer alone in fearing them. The aliens who had once argued over the Valiant's existence now sent cautious messages, requesting coordination. It was not friendship, but it was a start. Despite the secrecy, news of the strange signals spread like wildfire. In markets and shipyards, on frontier stations and deep space colonies, whispers grew. The signal had a strange effect people didn't just hear it, they felt it. A sense of something ancient, something that had been waiting. A hunter returning to its hunting grounds. 3 days later, a scout drone vanished. It didn't send a distress call or any last transmission, its data feed simply cut to black. Then another drone vanished. Then a manned patrol. The disappearances were in the same sector where the first signal had been detected. Reeve made his decision. The Valiant would go there directly. When the Supercarrier dropped out of warp, the region looked empty. No ships, no debris, no movement. Only the faint light of a distant sun painted the dark in cold silver. But the scans told a different story. Massive shapes were moving at the edge of sensor range, just beyond sight. They were too big to be ships, too structured to be natural, and they were closing in. The signal began again, louder this time. In the command deck, the lights dimmed as tactical displays lit up. Dozens of unknown contacts appeared on the screens. Surrounding the Valiant, they moved with precision, forming a net. This was no random pirate fleet. This was the same kind of force that had burned through humanity's defenses decades ago. The enemy had returned on. They had come in numbers. Humanity had never imagined. Reeve gave a single, quiet order. Arm everything. The first shot came without warning. A beam of white energy sliced across the darkness, tearing past the Valiant's hull by only a few meters. It didn't miss by accident. It was a warning, a message. We are here. You're ready. Admiral Reeve didn't answer with words. The Valiant's outer hull came alive, plates shifting and sliding as hidden weapon batteries emerged. Entire sections of the ship unfolded into massive energy cannons, railgun turrets, and missile launchers. The hangar doors split open, and squadrons of fighters poured into space like a metallic storm. Engines flaring in the dark, the enemy fleet began its advance. They moved like a single organism, silent, coordinated, unstoppable. Their ships were shaped like jagged predators, each one the size of a small city. And no lights, no markings, no transmissions. They didn't talk. They only hunted. The first wave hit. Energy blasts struck the Valiant's shields, lighting them in bursts of blue and gold. The deck shuddered under the impact. Inside, damage alarms screamed, and the crew worked like a machine rerouting power, tracking incoming fire, locking onto targets. Then the Valiant struck back. A volley of railgun rounds tore through the darkness, each one the size of a small vehicle, moving at a fraction of light speed. The first enemy ship shattered under the impact, breaking apart in a silent explosion of molten fragments. At the same time, the fighter squadrons swarmed, diving between the enemy's larger ships, firing torpedoes into exposed sections of their hulls. But the enemy adapted fast. They split their formation, trying to encircle the Valiant from all sides. Drones from the Supercarrier's bays flooded the space around it, forming a shifting wall of defense, intercepting incoming missiles before they could strike. Still, the numbers were overwhelming. For every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more closed in. Reeve knew they couldn't outlast them in a drawn-out fight. The only way to win was to hit them hard, so hard that the survivors would think twice before returning. He gave the order to prepare the Titan Lance. From the center of the Valiant, a section of the hull split open, revealing a weapon so massive it could only be fired once before needing hours to recharge. The ship's entire power grid began to hum as energy built up, channeling into the Lance's core. The enemy ships sensed the threat and surged forward, desperate to stop it. The shields began to fail. Sections of the hull glowed from enemy fire. Fires broke out in the hangars, but the Titan Lance was ready. Fire. A single beam of pure white light tore through space, punching a hole through the enemy formation. Entire ships disintegrated in its path, ripped apart at the molecular level. The blast carved a corridor through the swarm, leaving nothing but burning debris and drifting wreckage. The surviving enemy ships froze. For the first time, they hesitated. Then, as if obeying some unspoken command, they turned and slipped back into the dark. No words, no signals, just silence. The Valiant floated in the debris field, its hull scorched, its shields in tatters, but still alive. The crew stared at the displays, not celebrating, not cheering. They all knew what this meant. The enemy would be back. This was only the first battle. As the Supercarrier turned for home, Reeve stood at the command platform, eyes fixed on the stars. Somewhere out there, the hunters were regrouping. But humanity had shown them something new. This time the prey could bite back.